Presents Hancock and Kelley.
Welcome to Hancock and Kelley here on Fox 2. Great to have you along. On the right this morning, John Hancock. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
And on the left, Michael Kelley. Hey there, Michael.
Hey, good morning.
And I'm John Brown. Okay, I've always wanted to be a game show host. So let's begin with the world's easiest trivia question. Well, maybe it's easy, all right? So we're going to put the trivia question up first. It is, who said it? Who do you think said this on ABC to George Stephanopoulos while on the campaign trail last October? There are things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus. John Hancock, dare to make a guess, first of all, who might have said that on the campaign trail last October?
Who is Joe Biden, Alex?
And he phrased it with a question. Michael, your answer.
Who is Donald Trump?
Well, John Hancock, you're up 1-0 thus far. All right, there's the history. Let's get the news wrap by Kristen Fisher.
As soon as President Biden sat down to sign another executive order in action, he made it very clear what he is doing.
Basically, the best way to describe them, to undo the damage Trump has done.
With a stroke of a pen, the president reversed what he says his predecessor did to weaken Obamacare and keep taxpayer dollars from indirectly funding abortions overseas.
There's nothing new that we're doing here other than restoring the Affordable Care Act and restoring the Medicaid to the way it was before Trump became president.
The first order expands access to the federal health insurance marketplace by reopening a special enrollment period from February 15th to May 15th to give Americans who lost their jobs and employer-based insurance during the pandemic a chance to sign up for coverage. The president also took aim at his predecessor's abortion policies by directing the Department of Health and Human Services to consider rescinding regulations under Title X, which cut millions in federal funding for Planned Parenthood, and by getting rid of the Mexico City policy, which bans foreign non-governmental organizations from receiving U.S. funding if they promote or perform abortions. Today, the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee called it a slap in the face to conservatives just one day before the annual March for Life in Washington.
Many Americans disagree with taxpayer funds having to pay for abortions overseas, including here in the United States.
Today's executive order in action bring the total number signed to 40 in just 9 days in office, prompting the New York Times editorial board to write, "Ease up on the executive actions, Joe." When pressed how this blitz of executive action squares with then-candidate Biden's statement that you can't legislate by executive order unless you're a dictator, the White House press secretary said,
"There are steps, including overturning some of the harmful, detrimental, and yes, immoral actions of the prior administration that he felt he could not wait to overturn."
There's been a lot of talk that tomorrow President Biden would sign perhaps some more executive orders and actions to reverse some of his predecessor's signature immigration policies. But the White House press secretary confirmed this afternoon that Immigration Day, if that's what you want to call it, will be happening sometime next week. At the White House, Kristen Fisher, Fox News.
All right, Michael, since you're down 1-0 thus far, your thoughts on all these executive actions, not just the ones that she listed there that came from Friday, but all of them. There's a bunch.
Yeah, so John and I share a similar issue with the fact that this executive order governing is not an effective way for us to move forward as a country. Although it's not new, we've been doing it for a couple of decades. Every executive order that the president's put into place at this point is not a surprise. It's stuff he talked about on the campaign trail. Money's not going to fund abortions. That's against federal law. It is going to Planned Parenthood in a lot of places, including right here in St. Louis. Many women, the only access they have to female health care providers is at Planned Parenthood. So I'm thrilled that the president's taking these actions. I'm hopeful that we're almost done with all the executive orders, and we'll see if the Republicans really want to come together and work for compromise.
Hey, John, before you sound off and respond to that, I want to put this graphic up here because I know it will fit in with what you're going to say. The president has smashed the record for the number of executive orders he's signed. His supporters say he had to do it, like Michael said, to fix the issues left behind by Trump. President Bill Clinton signed 2 in his first week. President George W. Bush signed 0 in the first week. Obama signed 5 in the first week. Trump signed 4. Joe Biden in the first week alone, 22. He's now way up over 40. So we've heard your thoughts before. You were against it when Trump did it. Your thoughts now?
Well, it's just not the way the system's designed to work. And, the policy laws are made by the legislative branch of government. That's the way it's supposed to work. If you invest all that power in the president, there's a couple of things wrong with it. Number one, it's illegitimate policy for the president to be making that kind of policy. You think about abortion and different things, that should go through the legislative branch. But the other thing is, when one person can dictate X, it's just one president away from having all of it undone. And a lot of this is undoing Trump's executive orders. That's why governing by executive order is not right. That's why we need consensus in this country to pass law so that has some sustaining value. An executive order by a president will be undone in the first week of the next Republican president.
So, John, I heard you guys briefly discussing this on your radio show. You're the historian, the professor here. How do we stop it? Is it going to have to go to the courts, where at some point the courts say, wait a second, you're not the dictator. You can't just put all these things in law. What is the demarcation line of what you can just sign if you're the president?
Well, there's already a stay on one of President Biden's executive orders as it relates to immigration. There's an injunction in a federal court. That really is the path of solving this. And the courts are going to have to outline what you can and cannot accomplish by executive order. You mentioned the Mexico City policy, for example. He's directing the Department of Health and Human Services to look at that. That's what the order says. So he didn't undo the Mexico City order per se. There are limits to how far you can go, and the courts are going to have to step in, and I guarantee there will be litigation over a number of these.
Michael, one of these that you guys discussed was Keystone Pipeline. That's an executive order now, but I'm sure Democrats have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They could have easily rectified that through the normal rounds. So why go this way? And I know you're in favor of that, but it seems like a lot of jobs on the line here without going through the normal process.
Well, I'm not sure I am in favor of it. I kind of think Keystone Pipeline is something that we ought to continue to explore and move forward with. The problem is that we're investing all of our eggs in one basket. We're not investing in green energy the same way we're investing in fossil fuels. So, but Congress is not working. It didn't work when the Republicans are in charge. It's not working when the Democrats are in charge. What this ultimately is going to take is for the legislative branch to knock off the nonsense and sit down and come up with compromises. I actually think the Keystone Pipeline will go forward with some concessions as it relates to investment in the green energy. And that's something that's going to have to take place in the legislative process. And there's jobs in those hills. So I'm hopeful that's what's going to happen.
All right, we only have a couple of minutes left here on this first segment, but I want to get to this, John, because we saw some things from the Republican Party this week that got our attention. You have the impeachment trial upcoming. You had Kevin McCarthy going to Florida to ask Trump for help winning Congress back for Republicans in 2 years. You had Matt Gaetz going to Wyoming, taking shots at another Republican. You have lawmakers asking for the new Republican from Georgia to be kicked out. I mean, there's a lot going on in the Republican Party right now, not to mention Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz. It doesn't leave a picture of a party that has things under control on their side right now.
Well, there's definitely deep disunity in the party, and it stems from the fact that in the grassroots of the Republican Party, over half of folks that identify as Republicans are pro-Donald Trump. And so what you're seeing is these elected officials are kind of responding to their constituency in that way, even though many of them may find the president's behavior repugnant, particularly in the last couple of months of the administration. And so there's this push and pull going on between the Trump loyalists and the folks that would like to move on from Donald Trump. But I don't think the grassroots is there yet, and they may never be there.
Michael, very quickly, if they splinter, you guys are in charge for who knows how long.
Potentially, but this isn't going to be unique to just the Republicans. I think you're going to see this same type of split in the Democrats. It's easy for us right now to unite against this nonsense. I mean, John talks about half of the party supporting Donald Trump. Well, half of that party is supporting conspiracy theories and is not based in reality. We hear the Republicans talk a lot about AOC and their problems with her. At the end of the day, she's promoting policy. What we're hearing from Marjorie Greene and some of these other conspiracy theorists is simply that. I mean, we've got to get back to a rational basis. And I'm actually worried about the implosion of the Republican Party that we're witnessing. There's no longer a conservative voice that's fighting for conservative principles, and I don't think that's good.
All right, still to come here on Hancock and Kelley. Many progressives were upset when Republicans put that Clean Missouri bill back on the ballot. They said, just follow the will of the people. Now St. Louis aldermen don't like the will of the people, and they're trying to change something voters already passed.